Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. Now today I'm joined by Harry from the Chronicles of a Gooner, and it's really lovely to be joined by you today, Harry, because I love all your content and I know how much you love Arsenal, so this one will be really great to chat with you on. And I thought we could preview the Brentford game this weekend, talk a bit about the season. But first of all, how are you doing? How's your day been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been productive, but as I've been saying to you, I've been stuck in a load of traffic for a little while. And when you start to worry about all the things that you got to finish and that you've got to do, and you're looking at the clock and you're going, I'm just
And the
sitting
time's going on.
you're
Yeah.
just sitting in a load of traffic and you're watching the time on your sort of sat nav just keep increasing as to how long it's going to take you to get home. But generally, really, really good, and love what you do as well, and really glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Oh no, thank you very much, and I'm just really happy to have you on to chat about Arsenal. And obviously, we know Arsenal have been doing really good recently, and I wanted to kind of, before we talk about the Brentford game, I wanted to talk a bit about the season because last season for me, I thought it was an amazing season. I know we didn't, win the league, but none of us really expected us to go for it. And this season, I think it has been a little bit different. But considering that the team, worked really well last season, I know we didn't get across the line, but do you think perhaps Arteta, the players have learnt from last season because we started off a bit slower this season, and then we've saved up some of our energy for the second half of the season, haven't we?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of injuries this season as well. If you go back to last season, yeah, we had our injury problems at the kind of key point at the end of the season, but generally we had a pretty good bill of health in that, we were able to name a very similar team most weeks, and that continuity was what propelled Arsenal up to a level, I think, where they were really competitive. I think we all knew, even at the time when we were kind of riding the crest of the wave, that if you lost Saliba, if you lost Partey, and a few others, Saka, for example, you'd be short because we knew that the depth wasn't necessarily there. One thing that Arteta said, sort of in a press conference, that always sticks with me is, yeah, the destination is important, i.e., where you're going to end up, but you need to enjoy the journey as well. And although at the end of last season, I was heartbroken and gutted and really disappointed and down in the dumps for a little bit, when kind of the dust settled and I got to like just look back on how the campaign had gone and was putting together like a kind of season review podcast,
Yeah.
kind of dawned on me how many great moments there were.
Yeah.
And the Reece Nelson against Bournemouth, the going and winning at Spurs, the some of the last minute winners, some of the big moments, like all of that is special, and you got to enjoy that. And I was able in the end, I think, to look back on last season and say, look, obviously I'm disappointed we didn't win it, but it was a good season. And like when you kind of take your head out of the sand and you look back, we made such huge progress. Like to go from a side that missed out on the top four the year before to then going pretty much the distance with Manchester City, a side that went on to win the treble, by the way. I think people don't sort of remember that as well. This is we lost out to a side that won the treble. That's how good they are. Then you get to kind of look back and you go, yeah, the jump forward was massive. And then you come into this season and everyone goes, well, now you should win it. Well, progress isn't always linear like that. Sometimes you get to a certain point and then you kind of flatline for a bit, and it takes a bit of time to break into that next level. I think going into the business end of this season, we're really well equipped. And I don't know if it was that we were saving our energy. I don't think there was like a deliberate ploy to kind of say hold back in the first half of the season, because you can end up falling behind that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do the kind of damage that just isn't repairable. So I don't think it was that. I think it was more like we're going to change our approach because in the end we ran out of steam last season. And I do think at the beginning of the campaign, we were trying to adapt to new things, to new ideas. And that maybe made us not as attractive on the eye, but we managed to keep up. And because we've kept up, we're now in a position where it feels like it's clicking and we're in the business end of the season. So now, everybody's kind of really optimistic and happy and expecting us to push again. But it's not just black and white. Football throws up a lot of surprises, and we just got to see what happens between now and the end of the season. But I'm really excited for what's to come over the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's really getting exciting now, and I know we're playing really good football as well. I think this season, especially with Xhaka leaving, he was a big part to play last season. Like he scored lots of goals, and I think he was probably one of our best players up there. So I think this season obviously has been a bit different, but I think we're at that stage now where I think we look really strong. I do feel as though people do underestimate us because, I know Man City obviously you have Haaland, and Liverpool have Mo Salah, and I think there is that question if Saka is world class, but I feel like we have enough. I would say we have enough to win the league. I think in January, I did think if we didn't sign anyone, we couldn't do it. But I just feel like this team now just can't stop scoring and has this confidence. But with the new signings we've made, obviously, I feel like Declan Rice has elevated, the side. Raya's obviously come in. Timber obviously is injured. Havertz has really started to grow in confidence. Just talk to me a bit about how effective these signings have been for us this season.
Well, these signings were made to elevate the team to a higher level, but also to build on the squad. Like to go into a season with Rice and Partey is something incredible. But unfortunately, we've been kind of robbed of that because of
Yeah,
Thomas Partey's injuries. But imagine where we'd have been without Partey and without Rice. So in a lot of ways, these signings have been massive in that not only would they have elevated us to a new level, which I think they have to a point, but they've also saved us from being caught short, really. Kai Havertz came in, a lot of debate at the time as to whether he was worth the 65 million quid or not. I've said it over and over again. For me, the reason that Arteta was willing to push the boat out that little bit further and Arsenal were willing to was because they knew that he could cover multiple positions. They weren't bringing somebody in who was only a centre forward or who was only a midfielder. They were bringing in a kind of hybrid. And I think that is partly why they went, it's a lot of money, but, we can justify this. You think about Timber. If we had one criticism of Zinchenko last season, it was that, sometimes he got caught out defensively, and we started the Community Shield in the first game of the season. Okay, Zinchenko wasn't available, but with Timber playing at left back, and look how good we looked. And you have these players that you're bringing in as hybrids, and they can play in all these different positions. Timber can play anywhere across the back line, but we were robbed of him as well, so we haven't had him all season. And that was
yeah,
people keep talking about how much we paid for Kai Havertz, but nobody talks about the fact that we spent nearly 40 million on a defender and haven't had any use of him. Like literally, we had one half of the opening day of the season, and that's it. So I think all the signings were really, really good. I think some of them have taken a bit of time to settle in.
yeah,
I think that David Raya took a little bit of time to settle in, and now we're starting to see what it is he brings. And nobody's talking about Ramsdale right now. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to
yeah.
Aaron Ramsdale because I adore him, but the fact that that conversation has died is testament to David Raya and the way that the team is performing. Declan Rice has just been immense from day one. Kai Havertz, as you mentioned, is now at a point where he's really influencing and impacting games. So I think the signings have been really, really positive, and hopefully going into the real business end, if you get Timber back, if you've got Partey back, you got Jesus back, all of a sudden, you've got a really, really deep squad with loads and loads of options, and we're well built to face what comes, and obviously to sustain this level, because there's no point in getting into the Champions League once. This is a football club that we're in the Champions League year in, year out. It needs to be sustainable, and you're only going to manage that nowadays with a big squad and a talented squad. And it's taken some time, but we've got to the point where that's exactly what we have now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think with some of the signings, they definitely did take more time. I think with Raya, like it did surprise me, him taking over Ramsdale's place completely. I did expect him to maybe challenge Ramsdale a bit more, but I think, we might see Ramsdale's last game against Brentford this weekend as well. But it's just really interesting how that's happened because I'm with you. I really adored Ramsdale, still do, and it's just one of those things where you have to people move on in football, and Arteta's, being quite ruthless and made his mind on a few things. And with the Havertz one, I think, a lot of fans to start off with weren't really overall happy with it because I think for me at the time, I didn't mind it, but I didn't love it or hate it. I was just in the middle because I knew we needed a striker. But I think, like you said, with Timber being out, obviously that was money too, and I know at the time we did need a striker, and I suppose next season we definitely need to, make some more changes as well to keep improving. But I think with these signings, like you said, they just needed time. I think from fans, we needed to be a bit patient, which can be hard at times. But I think, especially since Dubai, I think these players have really improved. I know Raya, for me, has really improved a lot. I know, like the Chelsea game, if you look at him then, look at him now, I think he's got more confidence now, because I know when you play for Brentford and when you play for Arsenal, it's a bit of a different level, really, because at Arsenal, you kind of expected to win things, and I think with Brentford, it is a bit different. But I think as well with Declan Rice, I think he's definitely been a big part to play for us in why we're challenging for the league. And I just think he has been worth. I know he was a lot of money, but I think 100 million. I think we got good for getting him for that. So I'm really happy. Obviously, we are doing that for him. And I know with the league at the moment, it's really tough at the moment. It's quite exciting that with Liverpool, Man City playing at the weekend. I know we're a few points behind. Liverpool at 1 point behind Man City. But for you, like, how are you feeling about the title race? Because obviously the weekend result against Man City and Liverpool could help us maybe if they drew. I don't know, we've got some tough games coming up. We've got to play Man City. We've got United, Tottenham away. So how optimistic are you feeling that we can win the league?
I'm taking every week as it comes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow myself like, I have to say, I think I was quite good last season at managing the expectation, as in within myself,
Yeah.
and saying, look, still a long way to go, and trying to keep calm. But there were moments last season where you thought, well, it's written, that Bournemouth moment, and some of the others where, you've dug results out, and pulled results out of the bag that you just didn't think were possible. There were moments where you started to believe, but at the same time, you always knew that we were one or two injuries away from being
Yeah.
significantly weaker, and that proved to be the case in the end. With regards to this season, I'm literally taking it every week as it comes, because I think this is different. There are three teams in the race now, which changes things, because now it's not just about taking points off of City. It's not just about taking points off of Liverpool. Every weekend you're looking at two other fixtures that you're really kind of focused on, and you're hoping that they will take points off each other as well. Now, obviously, we've got to go to City still, but we've taken 4 points off of Liverpool. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's enough with regards to them. So you're kind of hoping that you'd be better than them in other games, and you're hoping that them and Man City can essentially do damage to one another. I do think if we go top this weekend, albeit even temporarily,
Yeah.
it's a psychological boost, because everybody's been talking over the last few weeks about how much we've improved, how well we're playing, how many goals we're scoring, how well we're defending. At the end of the day, we're still third in the league. So for the players, for their own belief, for their own confidence, they need to see something visual that says we are currently the best team in the country, rather than everybody just talking about it. You need something that you can look at as tangible proof. And I think going top of the league would do that. I'd love those two to draw on Sunday. But as I was saying on my podcast this morning, obviously that's my preferred result. But as long as we do our job tomorrow evening against Brentford, as long as that happens, then we can sit down on Sunday, watch on with interest, and sort of have a good look at both sides. But there won't be any guilt, any regret if we've done our job, regardless of what happens there. So for me, that's the most important thing. I'm trying not to focus too much on that game, and literally just us do our job. And if we do our job, if Liverpool win, it is what it is. We've done our bits, out of our control. If Man City win, it's out of our control. If they draw, happy days, again, out of our control. But I'm not going to beat myself up about whatever result happens there, as long as we do our job.
Yeah, like I agree. I think we've just got to take it game by game. I know last season, fans did get excited and carried away. It took me a long time to really believe. And like you said, with that Reece Nelson last minute winner, it just felt like it was written in the stars. It just felt like it was our season. So I think this season, I'm not really getting excited until the end. Until I think if we beat Man City at theirs, I feel like for me, I'll be a lot more confident that we can do it. But obviously, Liverpool are the ones at the top, and I think a draw is exactly what we need. But I think we've got to do our job most importantly, because if we lose to Brentford and obviously a result goes our way, then it doesn't really help us at the moment, because we've got to win. I think we've got to really take it game by game, and obviously in the Champions League that has been, we obviously lost against Porto, and I think obviously at the Emirates we know that the team, had the confidence and the fans still get behind them, because I think the support there has been amazing. Do you feel confident that the team can turn it around at the Emirates against Porto?
I think you've got to feel confident given how well we're playing. I think we're certainly the more talented side, but obviously football doesn't just come down to who's the most talented. There's so many factors. It's what makes it the game that we all love and makes it so unpredictable and amazing. But I think this is a massive week generally. It's a massive few days for Arsenal, because if, for example, we drop points against Brentford and then we go out of the Champions League, that high that we're on, it completely disappears. And then it's a test as to how you can pick yourself up. And even if you pick yourself up and go on this flawless run, it still might not be enough. And that's quite hard to live with. Having things in your own control and having control of your own destiny in these situations, I think is really important. On the other hand, if we do beat Brentford and we go top and we manage to get past Porto, and what is out of our hands happens in the way we'd like it to as well, i.e. those two teams draw on Sunday, what a morale boost that would be. We've overturned a first leg defeat in the Champions League. We're in the last eight for the first time in God knows how long. I don't think we made it past the round of 16 for 7 or 8 of the last seasons that we were in the Champions League. I think that's correct. There might be one where we made it through, but generally we kept falling away at the round of 16. So we'd have made progress in that sense as a football club, but we'd also be in a great position at the top of the Premier League. And whilst I look at our fixtures and I still think we've got a load of tough games to go, and I actually think we've probably got the worst run of the 3 sides that are in contention for the title, it would be in our own hands. And that is really, really important. I just think that the next few days are massive. If we can beat Brentford and then go and turn it around against Porto, that really sets us up for a really good finish, and we can give it our best in both competitions. And with players returning, you feel even more confident that we can give it in both competitions because we'll have greater depth.
Yeah, it's really going to be either really good in the next few days or really low, like you said. I think in the Champions League, I very much think that if we can either get to quarterfinals or semi-finals, I'd be quite happy with that, because I think we've not been back in that for quite a long time. And I think when I'm watching us in the Champions League, I feel like we're able to compete with the teams now. We don't get embarrassed like we used to, and it just feels like the right time for us to be back in there. And know with the league, I think you've really got to take each game as it comes, because, like you mentioned, if we lose to Brentford, then we probably won't win the league. And then we do have Man City as well. We've got a few difficult games. I think if we can get a result at Man City, then things will look our way a bit better. But for you in the Champions League, like, what would you say your expectations are at the moment? Would you say, because obviously we'd all love to win it, but I think at the moment, because we're going for the league and we're kind of having to balance that and hoping we can win one of them, do you think it's probably too soon to say we can win the Champions League?
I think we're good enough.
Yeah.
But it's a cup competition, so there's so many factors that come into play. You need the right draw, you need the right officials, sometimes you need the rub of the green. There's so many things that go into it. And it only takes one poor performance in one leg of a tie and you're out. That's the level that we're talking about here. So do I think we can win it? Yeah, I think we can. Will we win it? I wouldn't sit here and say that we would, because we're a side that haven't been in it for God knows how many years. It would be disingenuous of me to say, yeah, look, we're better than Real Madrid and we're better than this team. I think we're more talented than a lot of those teams, but it's not just about talent, as I keep saying.
Yeah.
It's about mental kind of resilience. It's about experience. It's about knowing when to go, when not to go, when to sit in, when to be a bit more aggressive, like picking your moments. And then when those moments come along, making sure that you take them. So there's so much to factor in. I said at the start of the season that anything less than the quarterfinals, I'd be really disappointed with.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, I'll be happy with. Obviously, if you get to the semi-final and you miss out on the final, you'd be gutted. But then when, again, a bit like last season, when the dust settles, I'll look at it and say, first year back in the Champions League in 7, 8 years, here we are, and we made it to the last 4, great. Or we made it to the last 8, great. So can we win it? Yeah, of course we can. We've got to believe we can, because we're certainly good enough. But And I also have been around football long enough to know that it doesn't always work like that. So put it this way, I'm not one of those that will be calling for Mikel Arteta's head if we don't win one of the Champions League or the Premier League. Let's just give them both a great go and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Like I know the start of the season when we were in the Champions League and when we were excited about it, none of us would expect us to win it or maybe get to the semi-finals. I think I've said, the players like Saka and Martinelli, Smith Rowe that really deserve that chance because they've worked really hard. So I think it's just really nice to see them enjoying playing in the Champions League. So I think it's a bit unrealistic to go in our first season in like 7 or 8 to think, we can win it. But like you said, I think the squad we have is good enough, and like we've got a few more players coming back. We're seeing Partey coming back, Vieira coming back, and hopefully Timber, can make a little return. Obviously, we don't want to rush him in too soon because we don't want to make his injury worse. But I think it is looking like a really positive time. But looking ahead to the Brentford game, I think for me at the moment, we are obviously scoring a lot of goals, but I do see this game being a little bit more different. Like I don't see us like battering them like we've done with Burnley, like we've done with Sheffield United. I think it's going to be a very different game. But obviously, we know Ramsdale is going to be in goal. And obviously, the players did play with him last season. But with Ramsdale, not being playing much, do you think he'll have much confidence playing? Because I suppose if he's not been playing much, he might not have a lot of confidence. Do you think the team will be able to be comfortable with him at the back?
I think yes, because Saliba and Gabriel and Ben White have all had a good relationship with Ramsdale in the past. So it's not something that's completely foreign to them, like to have Aaron Ramsdale behind them. And I also think that although David Raya is probably marginally better in some areas,
Yeah.
based on what we've seen, generally they're the same style of goalkeeper. And so, for example, it's not like when we had Matt Turner coming in and you'd think twice about playing the ball back to his feet because you don't feel confident in his ability to deal with it. In Raya, yeah, you might have slightly more confidence because of the relationship you've developed over the last few months, but you had that confidence in Ramsdale before. So I don't think it changes the way we play, is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
So I think on that basis, we should be fine. But I'd be lying if I said that I'm not concerned about the level of someone who's not played for such a long time. His last appearance in the Premier League was back in November when we played Brentford at the G-Tech. So he's not played in the Premier League for an age, and that can have an impact, of course. And I think you have to be mindful and wary of that. But you'd like to think that the way we're defending at the moment and the way we're able to keep teams away from our goal, generally speaking, and the fact that we've found other ways of building up rather than always going through the goalkeeper into the midfield. We've got White stepping in at times now. Jorginho can be picked as well, which gives us a slightly different dynamic. We can go that bit longer if Havertz continues up front as well because of his physical presence. I think because we've got different options now, Aaron Ramsdale can just kind of play a safer game, and maybe then the rustiness, if you like, isn't as much of a problem.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think with the team knowing, they've been playing with Ramsdale last season and they've built up that relationship with him. So I think, the team will be okay. I think it is a bit nerve-wracking because we've got used to Raya, we're comfortable with him, and the team have, gone really comfortable with him. Like, but I think defensively this season, I feel like we're really solid. I think we've probably got the best defensive record in the league. I just think we're doing really good. So it'll be interesting to see if Ramsdale will have a lot of confidence or if he might be a little bit rusty, having not played for a while. So I do hope, he can have a good performance. A lot have said it could be his last game. I mean, for me, I do see us selling him in the summer because why would he stay as a second choice when he was starting to play for England, and I know he is a goalkeeper that should be playing as the number one for a team. But do you think this could be his last game for Arsenal?
Unfortunately, yes. It feels like that's where it's headed. It feels like it's going to be the end of the kind of Aaron Ramsdale story. And I'll be interested to see if we do win the game. I'd be interested to see sort of how he acts after that.
Yeah.
If he goes and sort of spends a bit of time sort of applauding the fans, and that could be a bit of a telltale sign as to where his head's at. Um, a lot of people were saying, well, he's going to leave in January because he wants to be part of the Euro squad. unfortunately, that ship has sailed. I still think if I was Gareth Southgate, I'd take him to the Euros, because it's not like England are blessed with a load of top goalkeepers. Jordan Pickford, I don't even think he's better than Ramsdale, full stop. But beyond
Yeah.
that, you're talking about, I don't know if Nick Pope's going to be fit, and he's probably the only other one that comes into the equation and in the conversation. So I actually think Ramsdale should still get in the Euro squad, but he'll know that that's not sustainable moving forward. And, Gareth Southgate's shown in the past that he will stick to his favourites regardless of whether they're playing or not, and regardless of the level they're playing at. Look at Maguire, look at Phillips, look at Henderson. So, yeah, I think it probably will be a goodbye for Aaron Ramsdale. It's sad, but it's just part of football, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
it's just the way it is, really, because things happen. You've just got to. It was hard at first because I really liked Ramsdale, especially last season, and I think as fans we came to a point where we just knew Raya's the number one. And I think, like you said, I think if it is his last game, which I'm pretty sure it could be, I think if he is out on the pitch after the game, applauding the fans and having that moment with them, I think it will probably tell us that it is his last game. But I think, yeah, I think as fans we'll always have you'll always have a good place in our heart. I just think, like you said, things change. Arteta brings new players in, and it happens. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes with him. And talking on the lineup, obviously Martinelli did come off a bit injured. And obviously, Kivior's been coming in, Zinchenko's obviously not been there. Would you make any changes for the game at the weekend?
no. Obviously, we have to change the goalkeeper. We got no choice in
Yeah.
that. But other than that, I'd go with the same 11. Why would you change it? They're performing so well at the moment. If there's any doubt over Martinelli, I'd probably bring Trossard in, because I don't think that's a downgrade at all. He's a different type of winger, but he's certainly not a downgrade. I'd continue with Havertz up front, because I think his form has been too good to ignore and to overlook at the moment. Jesus looked rusty to me when he came on the other day, so I probably wouldn't put him in the starting 11 yet. And Thomas Partey looks rusty as well.
Yeah.
And they are players that I think we're going to need to build up again. Maybe give Jesus 20 minutes, 30 minutes with a view to him playing against Porto, for example. He seems to be really, really effective in the Champions League, Gabriel Jesus. So maybe that's the way to go. But no, I'd pick the same team. I like Jorginho being in the team when Zinchenko's not, because Jorginho will progress the ball from deep, which is the job that Zinchenko does when he comes in from left back into the midfield area. And I think without both of them, we lack that a little bit. We lack that sort of line breaking movement and those line breaking passes. So yeah, I think I would leave the team as it is, and look to use those players from the bench, and look to give minutes to people that we need to, if we're in a position where the game state allows it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, with Ramsdale coming in, that's probably the only change I would make. And if Martinelli, still isn't ready, I don't see that, the need to kind of change the team all the time. I think if something's working, then you should just stick with it. And I'm a really big fan of Jorginho with Rice. I just feel like we're a different Arsenal when he's playing. I think at the moment with Partey, not being 100% fit, he just fits in the midfield. And I really like Kivior as well. I think obviously Zinchenko is out, and when he's back, Arteta's got a tough decision to make. But I think, I don't think you could really drop Kivior at the moment. And I think defensively, I think he's done really well. And I know Zinchenko this season brings stuff to the team, and when we go forward he is amazing. But I think defensively with Zinchenko I do have my questions a little bit. But I think with me, the lineup I would be happy with, and I do feel like we have enough to win it. And if we are struggling, we've also got the likes of Trossard. I think he's amazing. It'd be interesting to see if he does play over Martinelli, or if we'll see Jesus. I thought Jesus needed a bit more time to get into things. Obviously, he's been out for a little bit, so I think it will take time. So hopefully we'll win that game. But I wanted to kind of end this on a few questions that people have asked for you. I thought I would ask people to send in some questions, so I thought I would end on that, which would be interesting. The first one is actually a really interesting one. With Bergkamp and Henry with statues, which current Arsenal player do you see will join them, and why?
Oh, Bukayo Saka. I think is probably the one I look at and think is most likely to be made into stone at some point. He's just he's on an incredible trajectory.
Yeah.
He's probably our most important player already at his young age, and the fact that he's an academy product as well adds to the whole romanticism of the story. So yeah, I think if I had to pick one that I look at and think you could be that guy that is made into a statue, it would be Bukayo Saka for his level, but also because the story is just magnificent as well.
Yeah, when I was reading that question, I was thinking of him because I think he's probably the player you see having that status of that the Henri de Bergkamp in future. I mean, I did once think Smith Rowe could possibly get there, but I think at the moment it's probably not looking likely. But yeah, I do think we've got a lot of future legends in our team at the moment. But I think Saka's probably the one you would pick because he's obviously been here for a while. He's helped us through difficult times, and he definitely deserves to win stuff with us. So I completely agree with that. Now, someone else has asked, why after all of our wins are we still put down by pundits?
It's just it's just everybody likes to hate the Arsenal. That's just the way it is. Like, I mean, I think people are reluctant to say that Arsenal can win the league, partly because they don't want us to, but partly because there's no evidence to say that this team
Yeah,
can, right? And if you were a betting man, if I were a betting man, I wouldn't be betting on Arsenal ahead of Man City right now, for example. And I can understand why people make us third favourites. I make us second favourites currently.
yeah,
I think we are in a better place than Liverpool, and I think they've been picking up results in similar fashion to the way we were last season. And I wonder if that is going to catch up with them at some point. It might not, and if it doesn't, fair play to them. But I think, yeah, people are reluctant to say that we're as good as maybe we think we are because there's evidence of those crumblings before. And I get that, but I kind of like not being the team that everyone expects to win it. I think it's a nice change from the position we were in last year, and I do think it suits us better.
I kind of like the pressure not being on us. I think as fans, like I feel a bit more relaxed about it. It doesn't bother me if people don't think we can win a league. And like you said, we've obviously shown a lot of progress, but we've not been able to get over that line. And I think it's obviously tough because Man City have been very successful, so have Liverpool. So I think that's another thing. But I do think people, like last season when we were doing really well, people did seem to not enjoy us doing well, and you could see that the media were just didn't like that at all. So I think that's another reason. But I think if we've shown we can get over the line, I think people start to back us a bit more. But I think that's a good question as well. Now, someone else has asked, who has been the best Premier League player this season?
Ooh, overall, I would say Declan Rice. And people might say I'm being biased because he's an Arsenal player, but I really do think he's been that good. Like, I do player ratings after every game, and I know that my opinion is not exactly gospel or anything like that, but I can't remember too many times that I've given him below an 8.
Yeah.
I think the lowest I've probably ever given him is a 7.5 out of 10. And for someone to be that consistent and that brilliant, basically, week in, week out, in a pressured environment, in a midfield at times that has lacked balance, in my opinion,
Yeah.
with people that are makeshift midfielders playing in alongside him, I think he deserves immense credit. So Declan Rice would be the one for me. Outside of that, I'd probably look at people like, I think Ollie Watkins has had a great season at Villa, and that's maybe going under the radar a little bit. It's not
Yeah.
just his goals, it's the way he leads the line. I think there's a few candidates, but yeah, I would give it to Declan Rice.
Yeah, it is hard because obviously we're doing really good, and I think when you look at Arsenal without Declan Rice, we're like a different Arsenal team. I look in recent seasons, and I think like how have we managed without him because we're so used to having him there. But yeah, I think he's definitely elevated this Arsenal team. I think for me, like outside of Arsenal, I think Foden has been really good as
Mm.
well. I know obviously Haaland has been good this season, but I think overall, I think Foden's probably been a bit better with different things, but like you said, Ollie Watkins is definitely underrated. And talking on like strikers, someone does want to know what striker do you think we should sign? Because obviously there are a lot of rumours to fans like want Ivan Toney. People have said Ollie Watkins, but for you, who would you like to have at Arsenal?
For me, the one I'd like us to maybe go after is someone that we've been linked with before, actually, and that is Dusan Vlahovic from Juventus. Um, I like Victor Osimhen, but I just think that what Napoli are asking is ridiculous. And I cover Italian football quite a bit, and I know that Aurelio De Laurentiis, the president and owner of Napoli, is notoriously very difficult to deal with. So you're not going to get any discounts. You're not going to be able to resolve anything quickly with him. It's just the way he is. Um, so I know there's a release clause in place, but I feel like that's slightly over the top with regards to what he's worth. Sometimes you have to pay over the odds to get someone,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not sure about it. I'm not totally sold on that. I definitely don't want us to sign Ivan Toney. A, I don't think he's good enough. B, I don't think he's got the right attitude to mix with this group. And C, again, Brentford's asking price is ridiculous. Dusan Vlahovic is someone that you could get for a reasonable amount of money because of Juventus's financial situation and the general state of finances in Italian football means that as a Premier League club, you're in a really good position to prize players away. Yeah, you might pay slightly more than what they're worth because that Premier League premium gets added, but it still won't be as much as you're going to pay for a Tony or for an Osimhen. And I think the guy's got so much talent that's just not quite been nurtured in the right way just yet. You see flashes of him at Juve, but Allegri's a very negative coach. And I just think that with Arteta and with those two wingers around him and Odegaard feeding him, and I look at him and I always think when you're talking about players coming from different leagues, one of the things that always makes me stop and think is physical level. Can they deal with the physical demands of the Premier League? Because it's very different. Maybe the technical level at times is a bit lower, but physically, generally, people are at a much higher level. And I look at his body and I look at his build and I think, yeah, he can handle it. He can do it. So that would be my one. I know it's a bit of a left field choice. I know people think that the boat has sailed on that one, and maybe it has, but yeah, that's one I'd be looking at.
It is hard, really, because I think there's not as many as there used to be strikers out there, but I
Yeah,
do definitely think we need to bring someone in. I think with Ivan Toney, like, I like him, but in the back of my mind, I have had that worry about his attitude. Like a few years ago, I was a bit worried. I mean, he is quite honest in interviews, and sometimes, it doesn't look too good. Sometimes you just better not saying it. Um, I just think, if you came to Arsenal and didn't have a great attitude, I just don't think that would go down well with Arteta. So I think we've obviously spent years getting the players with not the great attitude out of the club. So I hope, if we do bring him in, that isn't a problem. But I think we definitely do need a striker in. So fingers crossed we'll do that. But Harry, it's been so lovely to have you on my channel. I really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you for coming on.
thank you for having me. Really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. But yeah, it's been super fun chatting with you today. A bit about Arsenal. Hopefully, we'll beat Brentford at the weekend, and that can make our weekend even special. But hope to those that do watch this back, do enjoy this. Please hit the like button. Please do subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.